I got some questions a couple weeks ago on, I'm in this interview and the organization is asking me if I've managed people remotely. While I've managed people, I haven't really necessarily done that. That was Chris, one of our boot campers. And then I got one the other day. Raphael, he said, I'm in this interview and, I've managed people and I've managed sites and I've only managed a couple of different locations. And the employers seem to be overly hung up with the fact that there are 8 different locations and haven't I managed that many. I had another one-on-one coaching client. She was interviewing for an organization that I think it was about 500 people that they wanted her to manage. She had only managed 180. So, these kinds of things, they come up now. And they're coming up more and more now that employers, thanks to the pandemic, are becoming more open-minded about hiring people in different geographies. They're taking chances a little bit more on people who don't have all the requisite skills that they need. So I want to draw your attention to this. What do you do when you're in any one of these situations where you're in the interview? You don't necessarily have exactly what they need, meaning to the extent that they want it, because that's a lot of what happens, right? Think about when you are in an interview. I always say you're qualified. Otherwise, you would not be there. Theoretically, right? The employer says by the very fact and nature that you are interviewing for the job, you are qualified on paper, right? They've seen enough on paper where they now want to take their time, invest their own time to interview you. So, how is it that you get in situations like Chris and Raphael and Joy, right? They've seen your resume, you don't quite have, or maybe you're clarifying, you don't have to the extent that they want. What is it that you should do? Now, I've talked before about this, where I've talked about this in interview intervention. It's one of the key questions that you can be asked by an employer. How do you educate yourself? And while it's not exactly that question, in my book, I talk about showing the employer and talking about what you know, not what you don't, and all that good stuff. So I go into that in the book. I also have a video out there on how to get the job when you lack the experience, where you want to explain to them very quickly that while I don't have this, here's what I do have, and here's how I get up to speed, and I go into all those techniques. But ultimately, and you can check those out. But ultimately, when you get in a situation where you do not have exactly what they need, and you are in the interview, so this is not about them reviewing your resume, and they ask you, and you're put on the spot, the last thing that I want you to do, and the biggest mistake you can make, is start diving into and defending your background. You don't need to do that. You don't have that experience. It doesn't do you a lot of good to talk about the fact that you don't have that. What I do want you to do is get their mind more on how you will do something. Now, I've talked about this before, right? Hey, you don't have exactly what I need. You've only managed 2 sites, not 8. You've only managed 180 people, not 500. You've managed people, but you haven't managed them remotely. Blah, 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 whatever it is. Well, if you're over here, you're in defense mode. So what you need to do, right, we've talked about you're in the past, you want to get them to the future. But it's a very easy way, and it's a prime way to be able to introduce the fact that, okay, well, hey, yes, I've managed multiple sites, but I think it would be good for us if we talked about how I would approach that in your environment, how I would manage those 8 sites, how I would manage people remotely, how I would manage those 500 people. And get them talking about that, because this over here puts you on offense. This over here, how you will, allows you to sell, allows them to envision what it would be like if you were in that instance. And even though you haven't done this exactly this way under these parameters or these circumstances, or for this product, or for this service, or for this geography, or for this many people, or this many sites, or whatever, this here is gonna get them dialed into, oh, She's got it down. He's got it down. That's good enough. I know they'll be able to handle it. That's the mode you need to get them in. And so I've talked a lot about this being a key tip. I got a whole video dedicated to why you want to get them into the future. But this is becoming more and more prevalent nowadays as you start to interview for these remote positions, or you're doing more remote interviewing where you are going to have to do that. So I want you to be mindful of that. Now, one thing I'd like to add. So a lot of what I just shared with you, I've talked about before in previous videos. But one thing I want you guys to do, take this a little step further. So one of the things that I do when I am working with somebody who is preparing. So I talked about that woman, 500 people they wanted her to manage, but she'd only managed 180. Well, one of the things that we do is I'll look at the job description, or she'll define the job for me, or I'll think about the company, or I'll think about a senior executive like this and what she might be facing. But I will literally interrogate her and poke holes. And you ever watch the dramas and or maybe this has happened to somebody where, you're going to get on the witness stand, and what do? You basically have a mock trial. Do you ever go into a speech debate, or maybe you've heard about the debate prep, and you've got your own team there, hitting you with the questions and catching you and poking holes in the areas where you're weakest. All right, I need you to do that to yourself. Okay, if you don't have me sitting there doing it for you. So get the job descriptions, do these mock runs, and then interrogate yourself. Actually, this is really good. Who knows your weaknesses better than you do? Probably nobody. You're probably worried that they're finding all these, and chances are they probably won't. But they're going to surface some. And if you look at, hey, here's my resume, here's my background, here's what I know, here's the job description, and you run through it, literally run through it, fine-tooth comb, marker, whatever you need to do to chop that thing up. Where throughout that job description could you have holes? Do you not have as many years as they're asking for? Do you not have as much experience in their industry, in their market, in this role? Just keep going through it and making sure, where could they poke a hole at me? What would I say if I was asked this question? A lot of people don't do this. I know this is this is like interviewing prep 101, but I also think it's important to call your attention that you need to be spending some time to interrogate yourself. And so every time I get ready for a coaching session with one of the people that are in my job search bootcamp who take advantage of these coaching sessions, and usually they seek my advice for a couple of reasons. One is strategic and one is tactical. So, hey, Andy, I'm not sure where I want to go. I'm having some trouble deciding on my career path. I'm having a little trouble with pursuing something. How would I do that? That's one set. And then the other set is, hey, I've got an interview on the line. Hey, I've got to give a presentation. Hey, I need to negotiate a salary or multiple offers or something like that. Well, the people that fall into the latter group that are interviewing, when I say, okay, well, you got an interview, give me the job description or tell me what the job is, so that we make sure that when you go into the interview, you have no weaknesses, meaning no blind spots, no they're going to catch you off guard, no they're going to surprise you with something or anything. And we go through that. You should think about your interviews that way. So I know a lot of you practice, well, here, I want to say my perfect stories this way. What you're generally practicing for are the softball questions, the ones you know you're going to get, the ones that I've already highlighted in here, the ones I've shot the videos for, the ones that are on my YouTube channel. Yeah, that's the easy part of the interview. You win the interview when they throw a curveball at you and you knock it out of the park. So you need to do a little bit of interrogating yourself to do that. So I want you to make sure, just to recap this little portion, when you get into the spot where you lack the expertise, you want to explain where you are, what you do. You want to talk about what you are, not what you're not. And then you want to get them over to the future, right? Let's talk about how I would do that, because that's obviously important to you, and you raise it, which is a great point. You're right. I've managed 2 groups, right? Not 8. But here's the way I manage those groups, and here's the way I would manage those 8. Why don't we talk about that, right? Get them moving into the future. So this is a really good way to do it. And just as a reminder, you want to be ready for anything. Just do a little interrogating of yourself. All right, I hope that helps, because I know a lot of you guys are facing that stuff.